Honestly, I'm heartbroken about the destruction of the East Wing. It's more than a building, it's a symbol of our democracy. Betty Ford said that the West Wing is the mind of the country and the East Wing is the heart. And that's what it felt working there. We all felt that we were stewards and that we wanted to leave it better than it had been when we came.
Welcome back to another episode of Just the Facts with me, Jill Wine-Banks, and today a very special guest because she is a friend of mine. Her name is Susan Sher. She was the chief of staff to the First Lady, Michelle Obama, worked in the White House, and that's what we're going to talk about is her experience living and working in Washington and being in the White House every single day. She is currently an advisor to the Obama Foundation, which will be opening. And I did get a preview through another friend who's there, and it's opening in June of 26. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be such a great addition to the city of Chicago. I love it. Are you very excited about that?
Very excited. A lot of work is going into it.
Yeah.
They're starting to even show the landscaping. It's going to be very
Oh,
exciting.
the details architecturally, and the programming is going to be fantastic. So I'm very excited about it and looking forward to this addition to the city of Chicago and to all of you coming to visit and see it. But today we're going to talk about the demolition of, unfortunately, the East Wing. And I want to start, Susan, by talking about your particular emotional feelings about this, your connection to the East Wing and to the White House in general. Could you start with that?
Sure. Honestly, I'm heartbroken about the
Yeah.
destruction of the East Wing. It's more than a building, it's a symbol of our democracy. Um, Betty Ford said that the West Wing is the mind of the country and the East Wing is the heart. And
Yeah.
that's what it felt working there. We all felt that we were stewards and that we wanted to leave it better than it had been when we came. And this is not a partisan issue. Um, if I could just say that my first day working in the East Wing, the office was empty other than the furniture, which of course we didn't change and inherited it. And it was lovely and stately like everything there. But I opened my desk and in it was a note from my
Oh,
predecessor, Mrs. Bush's chief of staff. And it was lovely and well-intentioned.
oh,
And that's what it's like. I mean, this is the East Wing is the entrance of almost all visitors who come to the White House. And every day I would walk through the halls of the beautiful colonnade, which is no longer there,
yeah,
and you would meet average people, people with families and kids, and
yeah.
people who for whom this was their first experience and most exciting experience of their lives for many people.
Wow. Did you
So
leave
it's
a note for
heartbreaking.
your successor?
Did I? No. Well, my successor was an Obama person, Tina
Oh,
Chen. So I
oh,
probably
that's
should
right.
have
Of
done that,
course.
but I kind of talked to her every day.
Yeah. And Tina's the one who actually gave me the tour of the Obama Center. So funny that I
Yeah.
forgot that she was your successor. Yeah. I mean, it's just the emotion of it. I mean, we do see heads of state driving up to the center entrance, but everyone, if you're taking a tour, and by the way, of course, there will be no tours from now until heaven only knows when because of the destruction of the East Wing and the construction that is going on. So that's really the sad part, and I'm sorry that we're living through that, but that's how it is. So you work there every single day, and you talked about its importance not just as a structure, but as the heart of America. Basically, it's where letters get answered to everybody who writes in. You also mentioned, of course, um, under First Lady Obama, the destruction of the rose garden and the vegetable garden has to be also very difficult for you to abide by, I would assume. Is that right?
So, yes, I don't know if the vegetable garden is still there because we made sure there were funds for it to
Yeah.
keep going, and so that I don't know.
Yeah.
But the rose garden is another iconic symbol,
Yeah.
and it was existing well before, but Jackie Kennedy is the one who really improved it and
Right.
added the grass. And really important events have occurred there throughout many administrations. Just two examples are that President Clinton had the treaty between Jordan and Israel signed
Right.
it in the Rose Garden and had a ceremony. And President Trump had a ceremony for Amy Coney Barrett when she was announced as the newest Supreme Court justice. So um, it's it's a beautiful symbol, and it's become a patio covered but with concrete and I
Yeah.
guess limestone with um, yellow and white umbrellas that I'm told are like those in Mar-a-Lago, and it's being called the Rose Garden Club.
Oh.
So it's
Well, it certainly
gone.
fits. Yeah, it fits the personality and history of our current incumbent of the White House. And I'm fearing that even worse, let's talk about the ballroom that is being constructed, that he wants to name the Donald J. Trump Ballroom, and which many fear will look more like a casino lobby and gambling hall than it will um, anything that belongs adjacent to the elegance of the people's house, the White House. Um, and you and I talked about this, but it's going to be a ballroom that will seat 1,000 people. How many times in the time you were in the White House, or that you know of historically, have there been events each year that require seating 1,000 people?
Seating 1,000 people, never, as as far as I know. I mean, I looked because there's a lot of public discussion that you need this ballroom because of state dinners.
Right.
So I looked it up, starting with President George W. Bush, who in his 8 years, he had 13 state dinners. President Obama, in his 8 years, had 13 state dinners.
Wow.
President President Trump, in his first 4 years, had two state dinners, and President Biden, in his 4 years, had six. So they're less than two a year. And if we could just talk about the proportions for a minute, the entire White House is 55,000 square feet. The lovely East Wing is about 12,000 square feet. This is supposed to be 90,000 square feet. And again, if you talk about state dinners, the whole purpose of a state dinner is diplomacy. It's to improve
Yeah.
the relations and respect the relations between the United States and the host country. And um, I don't even know why you'd want to have a sit-down dinner for 1,000 people because it takes away from the specialness of the whole
Yeah.
occasion. These are intentional. They're really thought through. I was thinking about my favorite state dinner, which was the second one we did, which was for Mexico. President Calderon came from the area of Mexico that had where monarch butterflies
Oh, yes.
winter. So we had this tent, and these tents are not like a wedding tent that you're used to. They look like permanent structures. They're really beautiful. So we had butterflies, not real butterflies, but little butterflies all over it. And you came in and the lighting was magnificent, and he was really touched
Oh,
by it. So he was touched by it because he felt that we knew where he came from and we, the United States, cared about him. And that's
yes.
what state dinners are about. So um, the other part of it is, and this is for any kind of entertaining, and I'll give you an example. Between thanks, right after Thanksgiving, a few hundred volunteers from all over the country would come to help us do the Christmas decorations, which are lovely. About 25 or so Christmas trees, and they're each year there's a different theme, and it's really beautiful. And it's the entire it starts the second you enter the East Wing, that long corridor, which is just beautiful with photos of the president's families. On the left is the Jackie Kennedy Garden, which has been destroyed, is
Yeah.
no longer there. And it's magical.
Yeah.
And we would have 2 receptions a day every day for at least 10 days or 2 weeks. I forget the exact dates, but 1,000 people a day would be entertained. We'd have 2 receptions. People would
Yeah.
walk in, they go upstairs to the public rooms, and you keep hearing that the East Room isn't large enough.
Right.
Well, there's a state dining room, there's an East Room with this huge cross hall in between, and there's the blue room, the red room, and
Right.
the green room, and they're all
Oh,
open to the public, and it's lovely. And these are not sit-down dinners, but you get to meet cabinet secretaries or the president himself. They're lovely
no.
occasions. So I don't know, again, why you would want sit-down dinners for 1,000 people, whether it's a state dinner or just kind of the normal receptions that we used to hold, and that I assume they still do.
And well, of course, when you mentioned the beautiful colonnade, and I can only envision the Melania Trump red Christmas trees and the horror
There,
of how bad that was. I mean, I just, I can't. So I do know that it has been beautiful in other times. This was not one of those times. So
yeah,
I'm
everyone
sorry
has
about
their
that.
own taste. That was
Yeah.
odd, but
Well, yeah, or has no taste, but okay, I don't wanna be critical. I'm trying to hold my tongue. Um, and of course, if I were ever invited to a White House Christmas party, I would wanna be in the red room, the blue room, the green room, the East room, which is not in the East Wing, is in the main center part of the building, not the West Wing, not the East Wing. And I would wanna see the historical paintings, the historical pieces of architecture and artifacts. I wouldn't want to be in a brand new constructed golden blazoned ballroom or any other outside room. I'd want to be in the White House. That's the whole point of being in the White House, is to be in the White House. But okay, so you don't need it. What's going to happen to this 90,000 square foot thing that is going to be empty? I mean, 13 times in 8 years, did you say? Okay, so we're talking about, not even once a month. So it's empty mostly 300 and, I don't know,
well,
50 days a year.
it's literally between 1 and 2 state dinners a year. They take
Right.
so much work and preparation, unless he wants to just entertain the way he entertains in Mar-a-Lago with, I mean, it is hard to understand. But what I would also add is that, assuming there's a need, which I don't agree with, but assuming you want some sort of ballroom, the White House complex is 18 acres. There is absolutely no reason that they had to tear down the East Wing in order to
Right.
build it. It's the part that's, I guess, so shocking that it was, I mean, as you well know, first he specifically said he wasn't going to tear it
Yes, he
down.
did. Yes. Just
Um,
like the wall was going to get built and Mexico was going to pay. Yeah. Okay. He said he wasn't touching it, and then he destroyed it.
I saw an article, I think it was a New York magazine, that was showing that this is totally consistent with his life as a real estate developer, where the Bonwit Teller beautiful building with these
Right.
Art Deco sculptures, which was torn down in order to build Trump Tower. But Trump, then the real estate developer, promised he would save them and donate them to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which instead he just tore the whole thing down and they were
And ground
destroyed.
up. He just totally not only desecrated the building, but he destroyed it and ground it up into sand so that there is no more of the architecture. And I just took the Art Deco architecture tour of Chicago, which, if you haven't done, Susan, I
I have
really
not.
oh, it was fabulous. And I have the perfect guide for you. It's a friend of my husband's, and she was fabulous. It's such, Art Deco is my favorite period. So when Bonwit Teller was destroyed, I was in New
Remember,
York, and it's a horrible thing that he did, that he does all the time. And he did it with no consultation with Congress with the Capital Planning Commission, with the American public, with anyone. He just it's unfortunately, it reminds me a little bit of our mayor destroying Meigs Field, just sort of coming in the middle of the night and then it was gone. Um, that's wrong. This is a public, it belongs to us, not to him. He's a temporary resident in it, and hopefully very temporary, but he's now getting serious about a third term. That's something else we could talk about. But let's talk about, did he violate any laws by not having permission from anyone?
Well, I am a recovered lawyer, so I don't
Eh,
pretend to be an expert, but I will say that um, I think he did. Now, first of all,
yeah,
the National Preservation Act specifically exempts three buildings: the White House, the Capitol, and the Supreme Court building,
wow,
and from a long, involved process. However, at the same time and later, they created all these committees whose job was to advise and work with the White House. None of them were consulted. And then there's the National Capital Planning Commission,
right,
who I think really did have a role. The problem at this moment is that the person who's head of it
yeah,
is also President Trump's White House staff secretary. So this is a Trump appointment. And when he was asked about it, he said, well, we're in charge of construction, not demolition.
right,
So somehow, I know that there are groups that are thinking of filing lawsuits. Unfortunately, it's too late. Now, the whole purpose of these advisory committees is that there should be a dialogue.
yeah,
And because anyone who's ever been involved in building a building or construction or even just renovation knows that the give and take of a discussion actually improves the result. Here you have one person making this
yeah,
huge decision, and he and his administration are saying that no taxpayer money will be involved, which we can talk about how problematic that is. But the first way it's problematic is that it means that Congress, who would normally have a role because they'd be approving the funding of it,
right.
is totally taken out of the process. And then, of course, you have, um, I'm hearing that Republican lobbyists are just kind of signing up every um, company that does business with the White House, with the government, so that they're making donations. I think, just to name two of them, Booz Allen, Lockheed Martin, huge government contracts.
Right.
So you can imagine what that's like, first of all, if they're requested to make a gift and they don't. What does that mean about how they'll be treated? Do they keep their government
Right.
contracts? Or if you want government contracts, isn't that a perfect way in? So it's a really unfortunate situation, to say the
The
least.
conflict of interest is so obvious, and it's being done in plain sight, and no one is able to stop it because Congress is controlled by Trump, and they aren't even in session, although they are, of course, collecting salary. Those people, like TSA agents who are working, and traffic controllers, air traffic controllers, they're not getting paid, but they're coming to work. Congress is getting paid, and because the Speaker of the House won't let them come to Washington, they're not doing anything. They aren't working and they're getting paid. So again, another conflict of interest in terms of how motivated they are to solve the budget problem. If they weren't getting paid, I bet they'd be coming here and they would talk to Democrats. They would try to work this out. I still remember the days of compromise. I still remember the days of dialogue. This isn't where we're at. But okay, that's a different subject we could talk about on another case. I want to try to stick to the emotion and the illegality of what's happening in terms of what should have happened but didn't. And as you said, we can't bring back what he has put asunder. It's gone. It can't be. We might be able to stop him from putting up some monstrous um, addition that will really, I'm not sure what the right word is, but will be a monstrosity and look like a tumor added onto the gracefulness of the White House and the dignity of the White House, and will look like a casino, not like the home of the president and the seat of our government, the West Wing where all policy decisions are made, the East Wing where the heart of the White House is. It's just not right, and I'm very, very concerned about this. And unfortunately, with construction being what it is, will he ever get to use it before he's out of office? That's
Well, he
another question.
says it's
I
gonna be
mean,
done
construction takes
well.
years.
I know, but he says he's gonna get it done well before he's I assume the 3+ years. Yeah, I mean, it will, if it is built as planned, it will dwarf the entire White House. And I should also add, if he can demolish the East Wing, there's no difference between its position and that of the West Wing and
Wow.
that White House resident. Why couldn't he just demolish the whole thing and build what he wants? It's a bizarre situation.
And let me ask you something. Given how seldom large events are held, and even if you were inclined to want to spend your time doing that instead of the real work of governing and of diplomacy, if you had it once a month, you still would only be using it 12 times a year instead of
Right.
12 times in 4 years. Um, and it's going to sit empty, but you're going to have to heat it. Do you think he's going to be renting it out to the highest bidder? What do you think's going to happen instead of, is it going to be a warehouse? What's going to go on there? Can you even imagine?
That's a really good point, because maybe they will rent it out. Maybe that's how they'll help pay for it. Maybe Lockheed Martin or Booz Allen or Microsoft or Apple, whoever, can have big, big conventions there. It's the other.
Think about the security risk of that.
I can't even imagine the other part of it is that apparently, um, and they haven't said exactly how, but they will acknowledge in some way all these donors.
Yeah,
Now, the White House at this moment is devoid of commercial anything on it because of, again, it's the people's house. It belongs to the
right.
public, not lobbyists, not any one president. So this would really, in addition to everything else, radically change precedent.
Well, that is maybe the lesson of Donald Trump is there is no precedent. Unfortunately, what's happening at the White House and at SCOTUS, the Supreme Court. If you ask me to predict the outcome of a case, I used to be able to, based on precedent. Now, who knows? They are inventing precedent. And I think, to me, the symbolism is not just the destruction of the building, but it's the destruction of our institutions of government. It's the destruction of the rule of law. And we saw it visibly by what happened. And you were just in Washington for an event, I guess it was last week, at the end of last week, and we're standing outside the White House when I spoke to you, which was like an amazing coincidence. And you couldn't really, you said, see exactly what was going on, but what was going on. And it really stresses me to think that he is normalizing behavior that in any other administration, I mean,
Would
President
be
Obama wore a
unthinkable.
beige suit, and it was oh my God, he's wearing a beige suit. Well, that's what's happening here. And now we see armed federal agents on the streets of Chicago, and he's making it normal. It is not normal. And this destruction without any consultation or any need, he hasn't established a need any more than he's established that there are actually drugs on the boats he's blowing up. We don't know that they're carrying drugs. We have no idea that they're linked to any gangs. And he hasn't presented any. This is not a capital offense, even if they were carrying drugs. We don't kill people for carrying drugs. We try them and they go to jail. They are not executed. This is execution before trial. And that's, to me, what the destruction of the White House also symbolizes. So I'm very upset about it. I'm so glad you were willing to talk to me about it and share what it was like. I mean, did you get excited every single day that you went to work? Think, oh my gosh, I'm going here, I'm working here. Was that like an amazing experience?
I'm glad you asked that, Jill. Every morning I would start in the West Wing at this meeting in the Roosevelt Room and go through the famous colonnade over to the East Wing. And I would always be in a rush, and people are looking at their iPhones, of course. But I would look up at the Rose Garden, and you could see the National Monument in a distance. And I didn't do it every day. I tried to. I would say to myself, stop, look around you. You're working in the White House. And then when we would
Yeah,
be in the East Wing, we were aware, Eleanor Roosevelt was in these
yeah,
exact same offices. And, they created the office of the First Lady officially under Rosalind Carter. And she
right.
had, I mean, all
And
of
she
these,
was phenomenal.
she was phenomenal, maybe underappreciated, and did a huge amount of work specifically on mental health issues and
Yeah,
made a real contribution. Um, and it's the seat of what's called soft power, but it
right,
shouldn't be denigrated because a lot of wonderful things are accomplished there. And it's, um, it's somehow destroying history for no apparent reason, I guess is
right.
what I would say.
And soft power, like bipartisanship and compromise, and those are how things get done. And so not only shouldn't we denigrate it, we should celebrate it and celebrate, Betty Ford and Carter and Kennedy and, of course, Michelle Obama and every other first lady. And I think in some ways, you mentioned Eleanor Roosevelt, and she did redefine the role in many ways of the first lady and took an active part. Hillary Clinton really redefined the role. Um, and it's an important role. Unfortunately, the current first lady is almost never in the White House and basically does. I'm not I am unaware of her active participation in any part of policy or any special causes. If you know of one, tell me. But or if anyone listening wants to write to me, please do. Go to my website and you can contact me. I'd love to hear if you think that there is some special thing other than the red Christmas trees that Melania Trump has added to the ambiance or importance of the East Wing.
It's
And
interesting because in the first Trump administration, she actually did some renovations of the Rose Garden. I think
yes,
part of it was to make it ADA accessible, but you wonder what she's thinking because she certainly thought enough of it to work on a renovation, as many presidents and first
yeah,
ladies have. That's obviously gone as
right.
well.
And I think renovation is a word that has happened since Truman on, but not removal, not
That's right.
destruction. There's a difference between renovation and one last question I'm going to ask you about a renovation that people say, well, President Obama did it. He He added, as I understand it, he had lines painted on the tennis court so that it could also serve as a basketball court because he was a big basketball player. He didn't remove the tennis court, he just painted lines on it. Am I
That
right
is,
on that?
you are absolutely right. And in fact, I played tennis
Did you?
on that tennis court. And by the way, I read that Melania Trump added a tennis pavilion,
Uh,
but I should say, and went through the appropriate national planning process when that small change outdoors, which has no effect on any of the public spaces anywhere.
wow. Well, I wish there would be. I remember Jacqueline Kennedy giving a tour so that America could see the actual inside of the White House. And I would sure like to see a really detailed architectural plan for the 18 acres. And I mean, I've been in the West Wing, I've been in the Oval Office taking photographs to see where microphones were embedded. Not the usual thing that one goes to the Oval Office for. Um, and but I'd love to see all the rest of it. I think that would be an amazing experience. So hopefully at some point we will get to see all of the interior of the White House as it now is and before it is completely decorated in gold and or hopefully not destroyed. And Susan, thank you for sharing with me and with our listeners and viewers all of this detail about your daily experience going to the White House. I was thrilled. The first time I went there was walking up the pathway to get to the Marine sentries to enter the West Wing and thinking, this is where reporters stand to report the news every day. And I'm walking on that same hallowed ground. I and even driving to the Department of Justice where I worked, I drove past the White House, and every single day I marveled at it. I was thrilled. So I hope people will get a chance once again after this construction is finished to be able to visit the White House, or that they may find some way to let people in without going through what was the East Wing so that they can see the public rooms that are supposed to be available to all of us and to appreciate what our government is or was and hopefully will be again. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Susan, for sharing. I
My
look
pleasure.
forward to seeing you soon.